the importance of testing. Before I move on, I would just like to wait 1 second. Actually, let me put on my camera so you can see the person that's talking. Okay. So before I move on, I would just like to know if anyone has any idea of what logs are, so I know how exactly to go around with it. You can just drop comments or comments in the chat section, because basically I'm just trying to go through what logs are, the importance of logs, different types of logs that we have. Different types of logs that we have, popular methods of obtaining logs from your mobile apps and web apps, and analyzing of logs, and just like a conclusion. So I just want to know if anyone has an idea, or even not just like you don't necessarily need like a deep idea, but like exactly, like what's our logs, how can they be used, if you've used them before as well. I would really love to know that. I know we're not that many on call, but yeah. Okay. So Beatrice says yes. Says logs are details of all activities that a system records. That is very true. That's like a one-liner, and I really like that because it just summarizes everything. So it's like a detail of all the activities that all the system records. Are those the only people that know about logs? You don't need to be shy because we're not that many. Even if it's just like a basic thing, something that you've heard about logs before, it would be great to have your comments. I'm just going to give like 30 seconds for that while we're waiting. Then let me move to the next slide. So I said logs. What are logs? Since it seems that my 30 seconds is over and no one else is responding. So logs are basically records of events, of entries of events and actions or transactions that are generated by software applications, operating system, or devices. So from this application, you can tell that you don't get logs from only maybe apps or websites. You can also get them from your operating system as well. You can get them from your device as well. So you can get logs from your Windows. So once you open your laptop, the logs on the system are already running as well. So logs help to specify who is using the application, how often it's used, and moreover, testers can define whether the session was successful. It helps to detect possible mismatches or errors, and it's basically a record of all the actions taken by a user, right? So once your user logs into your app, the logs are going to be recorded. Once they're logging in, any action they take. So going into, like, as we go further into this webinar, you'd see like examples of that. So when you have an error reports, we have logs as well that are generated in those error reports. So I think for me personally, I think logs are very important because so if you are familiar with, like, if you've worked with people, right, you might have an issue that you reported, you might have a bug that you reported, and in the midst of or in the process of trying to get them to fix it, the front-end developer will come and say, oh no, it's not a front-end issue. The back-end developer will come and say, oh no, it's not a back-end issue that I've tested from the API or I've tested from Postman and it's running on Postman, and the front-end developer will say no on their end. They did everything right in code according to them. Never trust developers, but according to them, they did everything right. But the way to mitigate this or to solve this is usually by looking at the logs, because from the logs you can tell that, oh, okay, this is where this went wrong, which is why I think logs are very important, because you can't really tell from, sometimes you can't tell some of these issues from just screen recordings or screenshots. So for example, if there's like a crash issue or something like that just happens randomly, the best way to tell this would be through logs, because it would prevent, it's like less, it's more time efficient, basically. Instead of you having to go through all of the steps that it took manually, you can just go through the logs or submit the logs to the developers to go through, because logs are quite cumbersome to go through, right? So if you don't really know what you're looking for, you might not exactly get it. So it's good to also employ like your developer friends or the developers that are working on the product as well. You give them a log document that you've downloaded on your device or that you downloaded with your tests, whatever test device you're using, or maybe the test website or the website that you're using to test as well. You just download the log document and give it to them, and they might use it. Or you as a tester can also just go through the log documents and figure out at what point the error occurred, and basically add it to your bug documentation. So that is a basic understanding of what logs are. And so logs typically include information like timestamps. So timestamps are actually quite important for your logs because it tells the date and time of when the event occurred. Because sometimes it could be a time issue, it could be an issue that happens only at a particular time of the day, because we all know how bugs can be, right? So your log should also include event descriptions. So it would include like, oh, okay, at this time you navigated to this link, or at this time the user clicked on this button, basically. So your log should include things like that. Also includes severity level. So severity level is actually one of the things that you can filter by, right? Because with logs, we usually have, once again, logs are like usually a lot because every action that is taken on that device is being recorded, right? So you have severity levels in your logs. Like, and just, so for example, if the only thing you need from your log at that moment is just the errors that are occurring because you're trying to find a particular error, you can just filter by that error, or it will also show you warnings as well, or just general info about the device, the website, the web page, whatever is being clicked, and things like that. So another information that is included in your logs is the source. So it could be the application responsible, maybe you're testing an app, maybe you're testing the website, you're testing the component that was clicked on, stuff like that, basically. Then we also have additional information such as user interaction, system configuration, and sorry, give me a second. Yeah, or error codes, basically. So I said that because of how robust logs can be, the person analyzing the logs, like I mentioned before with the severity, the person analyzing the logs, they can select like a particular information that they would like the logs to contain. So it could also just be only the errors, maybe the warnings. So because logs are not only used in like bug detection, right, you can get warnings as well, because we use logs for insecurity as well to test like, oh, okay, maybe these are where loopholes should be. You can see that user data is somehow being shown to everybody, or maybe an authentication code as well is being shown to everybody. Anybody that logs in has, or anybody that just knows where to look has access to the authentication code, which could cause fraudulent activities, right? So you can tell that by your logs. So you sometimes you might not necessarily need like the errors from the logs, but just be warnings about loopholes from the logs, or just general information that, oh, okay, the user's information is being shown in the logs, right? So anyone that knows where to look can just go and get and scrap the data or scrape the data from your particular website or your particular app. So you can tell how so the logs can enable you to get all those like security loopholes. So I said logging is very important in software development and quality assurance, even though it might not seem that way to some, because once again, people feel like it's not really, or some people kind of feel like it's not like an utmost priority, which is very, very wrong. And yeah, so QA engineers can leverage on logs to extract crucial website or crucial insights to an app's behavior and performance. So you can also tell about the performance from the logs as well, especially when the timestamps are included. So you can see when the initial action was taken and when the later action was taken, basically, which is why it's very important to include timestamps in your logs. Because some people, the way timestamps are, you can enable them or disable them, because some people, for whatever reason, they don't feel like it's important, right? But it's one of the best practices to enable your timestamps. So I said, why are logs important? And yeah, so starting with the question, have you ever had an issue that was occurring for users, but you couldn't reproduce? This is a question for everybody, by the way. Just, so it's not like I'm talking to myself. It's a question for everybody. So have you ever had an issue that was occurring for users, but on your own test device, you couldn't reproduce, which says plenty times. See, me too, I understand. I've been there a lot, plenty times. So it's one of the importance of logs as well. Everyone else says plenty times, that says yes as well. Everyone else, you can always reproduce it on your device. Wow, people have all the devices. People have all the devices, all the Android phones and all the iOS devices. But that's basically where logs come in, right? They help you reproduce, or they help you show how these issues happen. So for example, what most people would use, they usually integrate what do they call these things? They usually integrate like remote login monitoring tools, right? So that once a crash happens, they would get the crash reports, right? So if, for example, an example of that is I think Snapchat, and I think actually most of financial apps also do that as well. When there is a crash, you get a pop-up that says, oh, a crash occurred. Do you want to report this? So those are examples of like log monitoring tools that are integrated to your app or into your website as well. Not a lot of websites actually have that because, well, for whatever reason, but most apps have it because I guess it's because it's more difficult to fix and it's easier to get the logs that way or to reproduce things that way instead of having to do it manually or trying to get it manually after your user has contacted support and gone through the whole long process, right? So I said logs are invaluable for various purposes, including troubleshooting and debugging, because what testers, troubleshooting and debugging, performance monitoring, security and compliance, user experience. So this user experience improvement is actually also an important part of logging, right? So if you can like follow me, think about it. Let's say you have a sign-up flow and you have various steps in your sign-up flow. You have where they input the information, you have maybe a face identification, where they input PIN, and you notice that your users are not, or people, when people get to a particular stage, right, they drop off or they don't come back to use the app again. You can go and check the logs to determine that, oh, okay, is it because when they click on this button, it wasn't working on their device, or the face verification is not good for them, like they did have the face verification multiple times, or if at the point of them starting, the time between them starting the sign-up flow to the time between them finishing the sign-up flow is too long, which is why they were discouraged. So it's very important, or it's very useful for things like user experience improvement as well. Then, like I mentioned before, crash incidents too. You can get your crash logs, your crash reports from third-party logs, or you just actually manually inputting or attaching your device to your computer and getting the logs as well. So this is just like I know this looks like a lot of text, but this is just like an explanation to the importance of logs. Basically, so I said logs provide insight into system behavior. It helps developers identify and diagnose issues, errors, and unexpected behavior, and you as a tester as well, because it makes it easier for you to tell that, oh, okay, these are the bottlenecks, or these are the parts that always cause issues when we're testing, or these are the errors. So even in your logs as well, you get like error messages, so you know where the errors are coming from. It basically just makes things, to me anyways, it makes things more seamless, right? Because it's providing insight into your system behavior, so you know whether it's from your device, whether it's particular to your device, whether it's particular to, maybe it could also be a network error as well, because we have like different type of errors. It could be a network error as well. It could be something that is just particular to you or particular to that user, right? And you wouldn't know because you would think that, oh, maybe it's happening for everyone, and then someone would come and say, oh no, it's fine on my device, right? So it helps to help developers and testers, actually I should have added developers and testers, to identify and diagnose issues, errors, and unexpected behaviors. So if you were not here at the beginning, I also mentioned that like so with the way logs can be, they can be quite, some part of it might be not really like I don't want to say user friendly, but like easy to understand, like immediately as you see it, right? So you might need to, for complex logs, you might need to consult like the developers on your team, just show them the log that, oh, okay, this is what I have. And I'm pretty sure they would appreciate you for it, because they're making their job, you're making their job easier, and you're showing them that you actually care about the issue, and you're not just dropping the issue for them like, oh, fix this, right? You're telling them that, oh, okay, this is what happened when I did this. This is how it's supposed to be. How can we fix it, and stuff like that. So logs basically give you like a broader knowledge of how the error came about, what you can do to fix it, how you can avoid it in the future. Yeah, all of that. So we have performance monitoring as well. So the way, like I said before, for applications like Snapchat, or applications like most financial applications like GTBank, well, I'm not sure if GTBank does it, but most financial applications actually, they would have some log monitoring tools which help reveal like performance bottlenecks, what parts of the app you're using, what it basically helps for analytics, right? So it helps tell what part of the app, like, okay, these features users almost never use, like maybe loans, or these features users almost never use these features. And yeah, it basically helps reveal trends, patterns, bottlenecks that could be affecting your system performance as well. Like, oh, okay, at this point, the app becomes very slow. Yeah, so logs help to tell things like that. It also helps with security. It's essential for detecting security breaches. Like I mentioned before, you may not know that, oh, vital information of your users is being is accessible to anybody that knows where to look, right? But if you're regularly looking at the logs during development, you can tell that, oh, okay, the authorization data should not be there. The maybe the right there and there, the API is visible for everyone. API should not be visible for everyone. Basically, stuff like that. So logs can tell that, oh, okay, these are the loopholes that are in your code. These are loopholes that are in your product as well. These are used for detecting security breaches, and it also helps like provide an audit trail as well to help detect like maybe security incidents, maybe at what point. So for example, in a lot of companies, there are fraud detection systems, right? You can also use logs to help detect that, oh, okay, it is at this point that the user was able to get this information from that the fraud person, the fraudster, was able to get information from the user, or this is where the loophole is, this is where the security breach occurred, basically. So logs can help you tell these things, and it can help you basically know how to block them in the most efficient way. So I already spoke about user experience improvements. It helps understand user interactions, their preferences, pain points, and like I said, so to me as a QA engineer, it's important for you to know that your job is not just limited to testing, right? It's also you have to work with the designers, you have to work with the developers, you have to work with the product manager as well. So it's important for you to not just be like an opposition, right? To show them that, oh, okay, what you're doing, or you have skills, you have knowledge that can also make their life easier, because user research is also part of a designer's general work, right? So if you have something that tells them that, oh, okay, at this point, right, I feel like we should change the sign up flow because the users are finding it very difficult to make it past this point. I feel like they would also appreciate that, and they would let you into like more meetings. You become a valuable person in the company and things like that, which is once again why I think logs are important. So I don't understand why they're overlooked. But yes, so another importance is system health monitoring. So it helps tell when there's like downtime, like, oh, when apps are not working, it's the logs are telling them that, oh, okay, it's because of this. Maybe there's an NIBSS issue. Maybe there is like a particular issue that is occurring. So if you have like, I think, what's the name? I think OPay does like when there's downtime, you can tell which apps help with like transactions, or which apps have faster transactions and things like that. So it's logs that help to tell those things, right? So we also have data analysis and insights. You can log data. So a lot of companies actually save the log data, or they have tools where you can use to save the log data, and they can use them to go through like, oh, okay, when you need to do audits, or when you need to check user behavior pattern, product usage trends, performance metrics, is used, basically you use logs for those things, right? And yes, we also have incident response and recovery. So when there are issues, when there's a crash, when basically, let's say the app is not working, like users have not been able to log in for days, and you don't know what is happening because you've tested and everything was fine on your own end, you have to go through, or logs would really help to provide a crucial role in solving it fast. Sure, if you don't use logs, yes, definitely. I'm pretty sure people have been part of teams where they didn't need logs to figure out the issues, right? However, logs help you to figure it out faster, right? Because it tells you, like, it's giving you the direct information of what happened, right? So you're just looking through it, reading through it. So you also have like log analysis tools that you can use, right? That will make it simpler. That will break it down to like regular language instead of like complex language, basically. So you also have log management tools that can be used to do that as well. I said effective log reading is a skill that enables QA engineers to identify errors, monitor performance, and all of the other things that we talked about before. So I made mention of some tools that can be used to obtain logs. Like I said, logs can be very cumbersome to analyze because it usually involves like a large amount of log data. Because just imagine, like immediately you plug in your phone, the data of your device information, every plus when you unlock your phone, you input your PIN, every action that you're taking on your device basically is being logged in, right? Or is being logged. It depends on, once again, it depends on what exactly you need while you're collecting your logs, right? You can filter out all those other things. But it's important, that's why it's important to know the right log monitoring tool that will benefit your organization or benefit you as a person, because you as a tester, maybe your organization doesn't want to, maybe they don't want to pay for the log monitoring tool. You as a tester, you can just get one of those free log monitoring tools that you feel like will be beneficial. And when they see the benefit, then you can probably get a more updated or more advanced log monitoring tool. So log monitoring software basically makes it easy to review logs. Like I said, it will break down the language into like simpler terms. So you can see that, oh, okay, at 9:01, the user navigated to this. At 9:13, the user clicked on this button. It breaks it down so much in a very readable way, right? So the tools often use rules to automatically categorize and alert when certain events are detected, like crashes. So an example of this would be Firebase console. An example that I have used personally would be Firebase console, right? So Firebase console, I wish I could actually show it. You have these different tabs that can tell you, oh, okay, these are the crashes that have occurred. These are the devices that they occurred in. It occurred at this point. It happened when the user clicked on this button. Sometimes there are soft crashes that even you as a user might not notice, right? So it might just be maybe the app just went for a second and then it came back, and you just think that, oh, okay, maybe that's normal behavior. No, that was actually a soft crash, right? And those kind of things, because they don't happen all the time, right? They don't happen like maybe it happens like once a week, or it only happens when you minimize the app and come back. It can be difficult to reproduce. So your log monitoring software is what is used to detect like those particular kind of errors, and it will be effective and save time by only highlighting important effects. Can everybody still hear me? Just in case, please send a thumbs up if you can. Great, thank you. Okay, so some of the tools, I added some tools just in case you want to try this out on your own. I feel like you should if you haven't before. It's very straightforward, actually. Getting logs actually is really, at some point I used to think that, oh, it was not cumbersome, right? I used to think that, oh, getting it is like an extra step because like I'm already giving you screen recording, I'm giving you a screenshot. Why do I need to get the logs as well? Until I discovered like how important they are, especially with like dealing with developers or speaking to them about where the issue occurred and how it occurred and who you think should be fixing it, right? So some of the tools that you can use to obtain logs for Android, you can use Android Studio. I prefer using Android Studio because it's straightforward, right? Getting the logs are straightforward. Or you can use ADB commands for logcats. That one involves you going to your command prompts and running a bunch of commands that I feel like is stressful. But Android Studio makes it so much easier because it already has an inbuilt ADB logcat that you can use. For iOS, you can use Xcode for a device log. So the way a lot of log gathering works, as for you as a tester, it involves you have your test device, right? So for example, let's say you're testing on iOS or you're testing on Android. You have your phones and you have your laptop. It could either be a MacBook or a Windows, right? And you're connecting it the same way you would connect your phone to your laptop with like your USB. That's what you're basically doing. But you have to enable some developer settings on your devices or on your test device as well. Then connect it to your laptop and you open whatever app you're using on your laptop that you want. For example, you open Android Studio for Android and you will just see all of the logs that are occurring while you're using the app. And you can just take like you just copy the particular logs that you need and paste it in a document and send it to developers. So for web apps, logs can be obtained via browser console. Web apps are like the easiest way to get your logs because it's just right there for everybody. It's on Chrome, it's on Mozilla Firefox, it's on Microsoft Edge. Like it's just right there. You don't need to download any extra tool or anything like that. So it's for Chromium based web browsers, right? Because I don't know if it's on Brave or on those other web browsers. I think it's on Safari as well. So it's you can basically just go to your inspect, then the three buttons, and you just see console, and you can just copy the logs from there. So some remote login services, we have some remote login services like Firebase Crashlytics I talked about before, Fabric, Papertrail, Sentry, Grafana, Loki. So like I said, some of these things are free, some of these things are not. But if you are it's more remote login services are more particular to people that are either in DevOps or devs that know where to put it. You as a QA engineer, you're not setting it up, you're just going there to get the information that you need from the things that have been set up, or you're telling them, oh, can you configure the Firebase console to show this particular information that I would need for my test analysis. That's basically it. So we also have how to obtain logs from mobile apps and web apps. So like I said, right, obtaining logs from web apps is easier compared to mobile, because with mobile there are like more steps that you're taking. Let me see if I can actually show a website to explain. So it's more straightforward considering all Chromium-based browsers come with inbuilt log monitoring. And I included some of the steps here in case you want to try it by yourself. Once you open your web app in a browser, just right-click on the web page and select inspect. Let me escape from this just so I can give like a brief explanation. So let's say we have this random website, right? You can right-click and you would see inspect. Then when you go to inspect, you have all these tabs here, and you have your console. So your console is where the logs are. So you can see that at the top of this, you can see hide network, you can see preserve logs, you can see selected content only, show cause errors in console logs. So these are like basically the things that you as a tester, what you would need to see in your logs, or what you would want to see in your logs. Like I said, it's very straightforward because these are like literally the logs. Like I also said, some of the logs can be in, I'm not the owner of this website. So I'm not in charge of what logs are being shown or what logs are being thrown, right? So you, as a tester, you are also in charge of like what you need to see, the errors that are being thrown, and things like that. So this is basically where you're getting your logs from. You can come to network and you, wait 1 second, let me refresh so you see what happens here. So on your network tab, you have like the scripts that are running, the APIs that are running. If you switch back to console, and let's say I click on, let me clear this because I don't know what's going on there. Let me say I click on this news button, you should see that, oh yes, user navigated to blah, 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 blah. So like I said before, it will tell you the actions that are taken. And yeah, there's a warning. These are like basically the logs. Third-party cookie will be blocked. You can see that I also enabled like my time as well, so you can tell the time frame when these actions occurred. You can change it to disable the time or to remove the particular logs that you need. But that's basically how logs work for web apps or for websites as well. Let me go back. Yeah. So like I said, let me go back. Yeah. Does that make sense to everybody, by the way? Just send a thumbs up if it makes sense. If you understand what I mean. Or do you want me to go back to explain that again? Great. All right. Also, there's also like a time to ask questions at the end if you have questions as well. So I just put a couple of steps that you can use, just the steps in case like that was too fast or in case I was rushing, just the steps I can also use to get it on your end. Just open the app, open the web app in your browser, right click to get your inspect, and yeah, navigate to console tabs. That's where the logs, errors, are warnings, and displays. So the logs, like I showed you before, they can be viewed, they can be filtered, and you can download them, you can export them, you can just copy. Maybe you just need like a particular section of the log, so you don't want to download the entire thing, right? You can just, highlight it and copy it and paste it in maybe like a notepad or a document and send it to your developer that, oh, this is what the issue is saying, this is where the error is coming from. So another useful method of utilizing the logs, especially when you want to discover, like I said before, right? Sometimes your backend engineer will tell you, oh no, I've tested via Postman and it's working on Postman, and the front end, and you check the front end and it's actually not working. Another way to check is via the network tab, right? So in the same space that console is, you also have network. I think I showed network as well. You also have the network tab. Sometimes, let me escape. Sometimes it might be here. So you might have to look for it under this place. Why is that not showing? It's not showing on the screen. But you might have to look for it. You might have to click on this side for it to show up. This greater than button for it to show up, right? But when you go to network, you would see the APIs that are being run. Refresh again. You see the APIs that are being run, and so based on your knowledge from, well, based on your knowledge from API testing, or even if you don't have knowledge from API testing, you can just research that, oh, okay, you can see the status code as well. So if it's throwing a 500, you know that, oh, okay, the problem is actually from the API. If it's throwing a 200, you know that the API is actually running. So that's the front end issue. So things like that basically help to tell where the issue is coming from, who is responsible for the issue, how can they be held accountable, and it also shows you the error message as well that is coming from this. So in case you don't have access to, maybe you don't have access to the collection, the Postman collection of your organization, you can just come here and see the status of whatever the API is running. So that's also another way to get some logs. However, if you, so you can see a download button here as well, right? If you download this, it's, for if you're like a tester, let's say it's in your dev environment, not actually in your production environment. Let's say it's not in your live environment, right? It's just in the environment that you're testing with. If you download this, you'd probably see user data, right? So like passwords, user ID, basically information that shouldn't be shown, which is why it's in the dev environment. But that's also one of the, like I mentioned before, security logs tell you like security breaches, right? So like you can see now that on this website that is not my own, that is live for everybody to see, you can see that their actual APIs are not visible. So my information is not here because they've encrypted that, right? So you as a tester, you're also responsible for to know that, oh, okay, this could be a breach, or the user's information should not be showing directly on the front end for everybody to see, which is what logs will tell you as well. So I said another useful method of utilizing the logs, especially when you want to discover whether the issues from API or from the front end, is via the network tab. And yeah, this is just basically steps to get there and how you can use it, like I mentioned, or like I just explained, how you can use it to track the API calls, the requests, the resources. Let's say the image there is not loading, you will see it in the network tab as well. Okay. So for mobile apps, you see what I said about it's being less straightforward in mobile apps, right? For web apps, you know, you're just opening Chrome, you're just clicking on, yeah, by clicking, you see inspect, and you're going straight to it. It's like a bam bam, very easy situation, right? But for mobile apps, you first have to enable USB debugging on your device. You will have to tap on build number 7 times to enable developer options. When you enable developer options to tell you that you're now a developer, you will see that success message on your phone. Then once you now do that, you can now go and turn on USB debugging. So if you don't do this, your system, whatever app you're trying to use on your phone, would not recognize it will recognize your phone, but it will recognize what you're trying to do. It will recognize the fact that you're trying to get logs, right? So once you do that, you can now connect it to your computer via your regular USB. On your computer, you use Android Studio or you run ADB Locker. So some of these things I also included. I think I could share the slides of this as well. I also included some extra videos at the end of the material for in case you want to do this by yourself, in case it's something you're interested in and you feel like you would want more information. So included some links to some of these videos for things that, or how we can get access to this as well. And yeah, so like I said, because the main thing that you would use as a tester, because one of the most popular things that you use logs to do is debugging, right? You have to, when you connect your phone, you have to reproduce your bug from the beginning to the end and then stop the process, then just take like all of that data and put it into a document for you're a developer. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to do all of that. Maybe you, from the analysis that you've done, you can see where the issue is occurring, so you just need to copy and paste that particular situation. But the important thing is that you are getting information from the beginning of your bug. So let's say the bug occurs when I click on a particular button, right? So I'm going to start my process from your test steps. You see, your test steps starts from logging to your account. So I'm going to start my I'm going to clear every log that was before I log into my account, so that it's not too cumbersome, right? Then I'll start from login. When I log into my account, I will just complete the process on my phone again while it's attached to my computer. Because if it's attached to your computer, it's not really logged. So I'll just complete the process on my phone again. And once I'm done with that, I would stop the process. And so for Android Studio, you have a download button that you can just download that particular log file, or you can just, like I said, you can just copy and paste it in case to remove like other random information that you don't need. You can also filter by the particular things that you need. Maybe you just need errors, you need warnings. Let's say you can also search as well, because sometimes, let's say you just need like particular information, like maybe you just need the device ID, you need the error message that is thrown, you need the error code that is happening on the back end. You can also just search by those things as well, which is why Android Studio is good. But yeah, so for iOS, as for iPhones, for iOS, there are various tools that you can use using any Windows and Mac. So I prefer using this amazing tool because it works on both iOS and Mac, so you can easily just like integrate. But some of these other tools work on only Windows, some of these other tools work on only Mac as well. But because of how like the iOS system is, if you have a Mac, you know how like if you have an Apple Watch, if you have an iPhone, if you have a Mac, you can just simply integrate them together. If you have a Mac, it's just very simple. You're just going to connect the device, open Xcode, then go to Windows and you see devices and simulators, and you view logs and device logs. So that's for if you have a Mac anyways, and you're trying to test on iOS. So the process for Mac and iOS is quite simple, but for Android is quite long. And a lot of the time you would have to be testing on Android because I think more people use or build Android apps. So it's good to have knowledge of both Android and iOS. So another way of capturing logs is to integrate crash reporting and logging services. I feel like I've talked about this twice before. Like I mentioned, I think I use Snapchat and GTBank, their apps. So if you have log services that are integrated into your app, the logs can be accessed remotely as well. So you can decide to pay for, let's say, you tell your developer that, oh, okay, there's this log monitoring tool that you can just integrate into the app that would show me the log. So instead of me having to manually connect my phone to my laptop every single time I want to get the logs, I can just check the log monitoring tool from the time I started reproducing the error to the time I ended reproducing the error, and get the logs for that basically from a particular device, right? This is why you might need information like your device ID for things like that, since it's not only your device that might be logged at that moment, right? So it usually involves integrating crash reporting and logging services, such as those other tools that we mentioned before: Firebase, Fabric, Bugsnag, Papertrail, all those other tools. And they automatically capture and report crashes, exceptions, and custom logs with additional context. So the additional context in this scenario would be the device name, the type of device. Let's say we notice that. So tools like this are actually very efficient in situations where you notice that, okay, these issues are happening only on Samsung devices. Should we add a Samsung device as one of our test devices? So it basically helps with situations like that as well. And yeah, which is why, like I said, logs are important. So some of the best practices, I'm just going to try to rush through this. Some of the best practices while obtaining logs are you need to start by clearing your old logs, because the amount of logs that will be there before you start testing would be a lot, right? And it can be confusing when you're trying to analyze it. So once you are about to start your reproduction of the bug that you've noticed, you can just clear the other logs that you don't need, and then you start to collect a new log for that. Then you verify that sensitive data is not logged intentionally. We've talked about this before. Be mindful of data privacy, because Yeah, to prevent fraud. And if anything should happen, you will be part of the people that they will blame. So yeah, be mindful of data privacy. Then you need to log version numbers and timestamps for easier debugging. For web, it's good practice to enable the preserve log option to indicate navigation. So like that time that we saw navigated, like the user navigated to blah, 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 that's because we enabled the preserve log option. If you disable it, you wouldn't see that, which is not great. So then you recreate the bug while collecting the log. This is self-explanatory, right? And the log file should contain the activity and traffic of the website or app that you're testing. And I think this is like the last part of this. It's just log analysis, right? So I included a screenshot from one of the Android mobile situations, right? So you can see your device selector, your device that is in this place. If you want to clear log entries, this is where you click on. You can either pause or stop the log. You don't need to press Ctrl C or whatever. If there's a button, you can just stop. Then these are the log entries, and you have a search box, right? So you can use the search box to, usually there are also filters. So with this one, I think the filter was cut off, because the filter can be at this side. But there are also filters as well. So you can filter by either errors, you can filter by warnings, you can filter by maybe just general information that you need. You can filter, then you can search for, like I said. So in a situation where you're using a remote control, like a remote monitoring tool, right? Like maybe Firebase or maybe Sentry, you can, and you know that a lot of users are using that particular app at the same time, but you're trying to look for an issue that will according to a particular user. You can just search by the user's device ID, or you can search by particular information that you know is particular to that user, or the user's device name as well, which is why it's very important that when you're setting your logs, these things are also included in the information that is written there as well. So you can see the device name, the type. This type is, like I said, you have info, warning, you have error as well. So maybe you're only looking for errors, and then you have the log entries. So sometimes, right, the log entries can come in this way where it's like you can see, it's not like, it might not look reasonable, it might not look like something that you can understand at first glance, right? Which is why we use some log analysis tools that can help break it down into, okay, this is what is happening, this is where the error occurred, this is what the error is saying. You can see, oh, connection failed, so it's maybe a network error and stuff like that. You can see why is this into what kind of error it is, and it won't tell you how best to solve it, but it's categorized to what kind of error it is, and then you can move from there. But if you don't have access to that, you can also, for complex issues, you can also consult maybe a developer or someone that, maybe the person that builds it as well, someone that can read it as well. Sorry, excuse me. So I said that due to how extensive logging is by default, you will need to set up filters based on how you want to obtain your logs. So for example, if you only want to check errors that occurred or only the warnings, you could filter by those. You can also select, you can also search for particular elements like device ID. I spoke about that as well. Maybe the error messages that were thrown. Then you have to normalize your log data to ensure consistency in format and structure. Because, for example, if you're using a particular log monitoring tool, right, it will have to be in the same format. I don't just bring logs that are in a different format and expect it to give you an accurate result, right? So you need to normalize that your log data is a particular format and structure that has been set across different sources. Then, like I said before, I feel like if there's nothing that you remember from this, I've mentioned timestamps like different, multiple times, timestamps and severity levels and error messages, right? So you need to ensure that these things are included in your log, because if they're not there, unless what you need your log for is not one of these things, maybe you're just using it for research or things like that, but you would need timestamps even with user research, right? So your log should include this key field or this key information like timestamps, the error messages, severity level, event types, and things like that that you definitely need when you're trying to analyze the bug. Then also, like I said, collaboration is very important. Collaborate with team members to analyze complex log data and troubleshoot issues effectively. So for situations where you're not sure what the log is saying, where the error message seems very obscure, where it's not very clear, maybe even with the log monitoring tool itself, is still not important. You can just go and meet maybe like a senior, maybe the head of engineering, or maybe a senior developer to explain where the issue is coming from, why the issue is like this, and how you can reproduce it on your end, or how you can prevent the issue from happening again. And yeah, so in conclusion, that some people would argue that obtaining and analyzing logs should be a developer's role and it's not one of its responsibility. However, it's really beneficial, especially in conversations with developers, because sometimes developers can try to like tell you that, oh no, it's working on my end, blah, blah, blah. But if you have like the right kind of information, the right kind of knowledge, it's the bug reports or addition of logs to your bug reports can be very vital. So even for a situation where you are, maybe you're working as an independent tester, you're working in an independent test team where the only thing you're supposed to do there is just test, and you don't even know who the developers are or anything like that. The developers are working on that product. So maybe for like examples like crowd testing apps, like maybe UTest or all those online crowd testing apps that we have, right? Assessors, I'm sure we know those online crowd testing apps. But online crowd testing apps that we have, right? Those the developers for those apps that you don't know them personally, they would appreciate the addition of logs because then they know that okay, this is how it was reproduced, this is the steps that you took, this is how they themselves on their own with their own internal testing can reproduce those things, and it can be very vital in the detection of that issue. It basically makes you a more important tester. It makes you a more important, a key person in your role. It gives you an edge over people that will just drop like regular screenshots or screen recordings and might not be so meticulous in their work, right? So logging plays a vital role in improving software quality. Is an added advantage when the knowledge gained from being able to analyze the logs enables an issue to be tracked and fixed faster. And it's also important to implement the best practices that were mentioned to ensure effective logging processes and better software performance. Because like I said before, from your logs, you can tell, oh, the performance of your system, how we can optimize it for it to be faster, where users are having issues, how basically it makes you, like I said, these things, if you let's say from your logs, you've generated all of these analytics and you give them to anybody, I'm pretty sure they would appreciate it because you're helping their products become better, you're helping them get more users, and you become a key vital person in your role. So yeah, I think that's it from me. So in summary, we're able to discuss what logs are, why they're important, how to obtain logs from mobile apps and web apps. We also discuss analyzing logs as well, some of the tools that we can use to get logs. And yeah, do we have any questions, please? Was I speaking too fast? Was I rushing? Do we have any questions? You don't need to have them now. You can also send them later as well, because I don't mind answering further questions about this. But I'm very passionate about this. But yes. Okay. Can you completely erase logs from your phone? And if so, how are forensic experts still able to retrieve them even after I deleted the log? So for like I mentioned before, right, there are, one second, sir. So like I mentioned before, for forensic experts, your device automatically stores logs. So like every action that you've ever taken from the beginning of you getting your phone to the end of your phone are being stored in some database somewhere, probably the owner of your device, right? So you as a person can only erase the logs that you're trying to, how should I put it? So let's say you connect your phone to your device, to your laptop, right? It's only the actions that you've taken on your own end that you can erase. You can't erase like all the logs from your phone, except if factory resets it. I've actually never thought about that, except maybe if factory resets it, right? Because of how cumbersome logs are, it requires a massive amount of storage. So I would not think that people would have all of the storage of all of the devices unless they do. Maybe they're just that rich. I don't know. But I would assume that once you factory reset your device, all of the logs that you've taken with that, or all of the logs, all of the actions that you've taken with the phone would also be cleared as well. I think that's actually something I also want to look into. I'll get back to you on that. I'll actually get back to you on that. But that's like my current answer based on my understanding of logs. Does that answer your question? All right. Any other question?
Okay, does anybody have any other question?
Yeah, I must be able to
Any
just.
other question?
Well, yes, that is it for me. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Ifeoluwa. That was a very, very detailed one. That was a very detailed one. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for coming to teach us. All right. So I don't know if everyone has registered for the testers meet and greet, but we are closed. So I hope we are all preparing for the testers meet and greet, which is coming up next week. By this time next week, we'll all be at the Zone Bagada, having a very wonderful time with professionals in the testing field. So if you have not registered, I'm sorry, registration is closed. And for those that are registered, get ready 9 a.m. so that you'll be able to get a good seat, because I think there's going to be a lot of people, because over 400 people registered for it. So thank you so much, Ifeoluwa, and thank you everyone who has joined. I can't wait to see you at the Zone Bagada on Saturday. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Adobe.
Bye, Emmanuel. Okay. Should I?